On a hill above Floyd, Virginia, where fog sits on the grass like something thinking, there stands a church that never learned how to let go. Small, weather-beaten, holding the weight of more winters than it was ever built for. The doors haven't opened for a congregation in decades, but if you stand close enough, you will swear the building is listening. People who visit after dark say the church feels warm inside, even in the dead of February. Some hear footsteps in the choir loft, soft and careful, like someone afraid to disturb the silence they've been keeping. And one caretaker found a Bible open to a page no one in the town had memorized, yet the sermon written in the margins matched the pastor's handwriting from a Sunday he never lived to preach. Tonight, we open the file on Floyd Presbyterian Church, a sanctuary aging slower than the world around it. Stay through the middle of this story, because one event recorded in the church's final months is so strange, so quietly unnerving, that even the surviving members refuse to speak of it out loud. Floyd Presbyterian was built in the late 1800s by farmers and carpenters who believed a church should match the land it stood on. Practical. Plain. Strong. They raised the walls by hand, using pine cut from the ridge behind the hill. Every board carried the scent of sun-warmed sap and cold morning air. It wasn't just a building, it was a promise. A place where births were announced with a ringing bell, and deaths were mourned with hymns that trembled through the wooden floorboards. Families walked to service down narrow dirt paths, the kind that disappear in grass when no one uses them anymore. But inside the church, the world felt wide, as if the mountains stepped aside to give the congregation room to breathe. The bell was simple, not ornate, not imported, but it carried across the valley with surprising reach. It rang for weddings and harvest blessings, for storms survived and storms endured. But the bell also rang for warnings. One farmer claimed he heard it toll 3 times on a night without wind, just hours before his barn collapsed in a freak lightning strike. He lived his entire life insisting, the church knew before anyone else. And then there was the morning when the bell rang exactly once with a deep, exhausted tone. The town later learned that on that same morning, the last of the church's founding families quietly left Floyd forever. Some said the bell was saying goodbye. Others said it was grieving. The second pew on the left belonged to a man named Elias Turner. A farmer. A widower. The kind of man who carried sadness like a coat he'd forgotten how to take off. He never missed a service, never arrived late, never sat anywhere else. When Elias died, the church honored him with a single rose placed on his pew every Sunday for a month. But on the fourth Sunday, something happened that the elders refused to put in the official logbook. The rose did not wilt. Its stem was cold as if kept in water, but the vase beside it was bone dry. The pastor swore he heard someone cough from the second pew just before he began the sermon. A soft, familiar cough he had heard every Sunday for 20 years. When the pastor walked down the aisle to check the pew, the wood was warm. As if someone had just stood up, but that's not the part that unsettles people. Weeks later, during a cleaning day, someone found Elias's old Bible open on the pew, as if someone had just stood up. But that's not the part that unsettles people. To the psalm he requested for his funeral. Elias's funeral had been months earlier, and the Bible had disappeared the day he died. Small-town choirs know how to fill a room. They don't need training, only breath and memory. The choir of Floyd Presbyterian held the entire county together every Christmas Eve. People came from miles away to hear them sing, while lanterns flickered in the windows and frost crawled patiently up the edges of the glass. But after attendance dwindled and only a few voices remained, something strange began to happen. During rehearsals, the choir director would stop, look up at the rafters, and ask, "Who's singing the harmony?" No one answered, because no one was. Yet a clear alto voice wove itself through the hymns, steady, calm, slightly delayed, as if singing from another room. The last time the choir performed, the congregation reported hearing a full harmony section when only 3 women stood at the front. Recordings made that night picked up 4 voices. The 4th does not match anyone in the region. When the final pastor prepared to close the church, he wrote a letter describing his last night alone inside. He placed the letter in the church's Bible before locking the doors. The letter survives. The pastor does not. This is what he wrote. The church feels heavier tonight, not darker, just full, as if the memories don't know where to go. He claimed he heard someone walking in the Sunday school room, not pacing, just shifting weight, almost like they were waiting to be acknowledged. He did not check the room. He simply whispered, "You can rest now." When he turned to leave, the sanctuary smelled faintly of pine oil and snow, the scent the church always had decades earlier when the congregation was alive. He closed the door, turned the key, and the church behind him sighed, as if relieved to finally sleep. Today, if you step onto the hill, you'll hear the same wind that brushed the church walls when the congregation first gathered. Inside, the pews still wait like quiet sentinels. The second pew remains slightly lighter in color than the others, as if warmed by someone who never left. Visitors say the sanctuary feels aware. Like a memory that hasn't finished remembering. Some hear music from the choir loft, some hear footsteps, some smell a single red rose. And once a year, on the coldest week of winter, the bell, the old rusted bell, gives a single trembling note, even though the clapper has not worked in decades. Maybe it's the wind, maybe it's the mountains, maybe it's the congregation checking in one last time. But if you stayed with this story all the way to its quiet end, then you carry these old sanctuaries in your chest, just like we do. Subscribe. Before the next forgotten story opens. This is Dark Atlas Files, Floyd Presbyterian Church, Floyd, Virginia. Comment below if you know a place where silence remembers the names we've forgotten.